Okay, so I'm Rahul Saha, and in the last class we had discussed about the female external and internal genitalia. I had explained to you the functional characteristics of or the functional anatomy of the female vagina. It comprises of three layers. That is tunica mucosa, tunica muscularis, and tunica adventitia. Then we had talked about the Skene's glands also, right? Labia majora, labia minora, and then the anterior to the vaginal introitus is the urethral orifice, and this is where the urine passes from the body, and below and to the either side of the urethral orifice are openings of two small ducts leading to the paired lesser vestibular glands. They are also known as the Skene's glands, right? Good evening, Jyoti. So that we had talked about, and also we had talked about that each side of the, you can say, urethral or the introitus, introitus are openings of another pair of glands. They're known as the greater vestibular glands. Good evening, Vanshika. And that is known as Bartholin's glands, right? So this we had talked about. Then we had talked about the clitoris also, the clitoral shaft also, right? That the average length of the glans of the clitoris is almost 0.5 inch and its diameter is 0.5 centimeter only. And the glans is the externally visible portion of the clitoris, and the main name is the glans clitoris only. Okay, and that is covered by, you can say, a specific structure known as clitoral prepuce, right? The clitoral glands. Then we were talking about the mammary glands, the breast development, right? So I told you that each breast contains glandular tissue divided into 15 to 20 lobes, right? And those lobes are separated by fat and ligamentous tissue. Mainly, as per the neat examination, they are known as the suspensory ligaments of Cooper, which provide support for the breast, and it becomes lesser effective in women. Okay, and then I told you that each mammary lobe is divided into various, or you can say multiple lobules. Okay, and each lobule, okay, contains clusters of mammary alveoli, and each alveolus is the functional unit of mammary gland, and it is a hollow sphere of milk secreting cells, right? So we had discussed till this point. Now, each alveolus, it receives an extensive blood supply. Okay, each alveolus, it receives an extensive blood supply. Okay, and that extensive blood supply that it receives, right, also provides raw materials for milk synthesis and transports the hormones that control alveolar growth and function. Okay, raw material for milk synthesis and also the hormones that control the alveolar function, so that it does. And then the milk synthesized and secreted from this alveoli then enter the secondary mammary tubules. Okay, they enter the secondary mammary tubule because the milk is produced in alveoli only. Okay, then one mark question: the alveoli present in the lobules that produce milk, and then it enters the secondary mammary tubules. Okay, and then what happens is the secondary mammary tubules from each lobe, okay, they join to form a mammary duct, okay, and which then empties into a wider mammary ampulla where the milk is stored. Okay, so the secondary tubules emanating from each lobe, they join together okay, to form a mammary duct, which in turn empty into, you can say, the mammary ampulla. Here the milk storage occurs. Okay. After this, what comes is the ampullae then empty into lactiferous duct, okay, which then will open into the nipple. Okay, so they will, various ampullae, the plural will be ampullae, they will open into the lactiferous duct, which will then open into the nipple. Okay, so this is the entire, you can say, flow chart starting from the alveoli to the secondary mammary, you can say, tubule, then the mammary duct, then the mammary ampulla, then the lactiferous duct, okay, and then the nipple. So when it is, the nipples are surrounded by a ring of pigmented skin, they are known as the areola, which also contain the oil glands. Okay, and it's a very very long process, the development of mammary glands. So they begin at, you can say, during the, or their initiation occurs during the prenatal development only, okay, but major growth occurs at puberty, okay, with extensive branching of the glandular tissue and the formation of the lobules, and the maximum development would occur during pregnancy, okay. So the mammary glands of nulliparous women, okay, they never reach this terminal stage of maturity, okay. So that is again a neat question, that they will never reach the terminal stage of maturity. Okay. Good evening, Amita. So now hormonal control, if you talk about, okay, so growth and development of any mammary gland are controlled by estrogen, progesterone, and also some extra ovarian hormones. Okay. So in prepubertal females, the mammary gland tissue is relatively inactive. But when the ovaries begin to secrete estrogen, the alveoli and ducts, they begin extensive growth. Okay. Now during the menstrual cycle, the glandular tissue, they undergoes enlargement. Okay. When estrogen and progesterone levels are high. Okay. Therefore, more and more breast development occurs. Okay. And during pregnancy, the rising estrogen and progesterone in the blood, along with adrenal hormones and growth hormone, they would cause the glandular tissue to enlarge even more and the ducts to branch. Okay. So you can say during pregnancy, the estrogen and progesterone, both the levels are high, and that would lead to high amount of branching of the glandular tissue. Okay, and more breast development. Okay, and in the last, you can say, trimester of pregnancy, the glandular tissue does not secrete milk, but it secretes a clear fluid known as colostrum. Okay, so it contains water, protein, and also maternal antibody like IgA. Okay, last trimester, a clear fluid, colostrum, is secreted. Okay, is rich in, you can say, protein, also contains water and maternal antibody, secreting antibody like IgA are present in high amount, and it nourishes the infants before true milk, okay, before true milk is secreted, okay. Now we have various diseases of the breasts, like you have fibroadenomas, which are the breast lumps, okay, which feel like a firm grape, okay. They are benign in nature, and you can say very common in women under the age of 30, okay. But then you have breast cancer, okay. When it becomes malignant, you have BRCA breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer, okay, in inherited type also, okay. So mostly it is BRCA gene, okay. So BRCA1 gene is present on chromosome number 17, okay, which codes for a protein involved in DNA repair protein, okay. So the thing is, expression of this gene normally guards against mutations, okay, that may cause breast cancer, and also ovarian cancer is in women, okay. But there is some mutation in it, like then you will be having breast cancer and all. So that is again a problem. Then you have BRCA2 gene and all. So mostly this gene is under 1 and 2. Most of the research happens in these two genes, okay, studying the mutations present in these two genes. Otherwise, if these two genes they remain proper, you will not have any kind of breast problem, okay. Then you can go for biopsy, and if you want to go for x-ray of the breast, that is known as a mammogram. So mammogram is the x-ray of the breast, okay, using very low doses of radiation. That can also be done, okay. So that is there. So now we switch our topic to the menstrual cycle. Okay, very important topic is our menstrual cycle. Okay, so in some mammals, okay, the females are continuously receptive to males but do not ovulate unless stimuli associated with copulation or other male sexual behaviors are present. Okay, this phenomenon is known as induced ovulation. Okay, which is contrast or which is contradictory to spontaneous ovulation, which is not dependent on male behavior or copulation. There are two types of, first of all, you can say ovulatory processes, okay. You have induced ovulation. Ovulation would only occur during the coitus or copulation. Male behavior dependent on male behavior. On male behavior. Then you have, you can say, spontaneous ovulation, where it is not dependent, okay, not dependent on, the ovulation is not dependent on male behavior or copulation. So first of all, there are, these are the two types, okay. So you can say that menstrual cycles are found in humans and certain other primates, such as you can say apes. You have the, good evening, you say apes, then baboons, then monkeys, and also in some bats, shrews, okay, where uterine bleeding or menstruation occurs during each cycle, okay. But the thing is, there is a little bit controversy. The controversy is as to whether human females exhibit a subtle estrous cycle as well as a menstrual cycle. Like, what do I mean by this statement is, if women are more receptive to sexual intercourse around the time of ovulation than at other times in the menstrual cycle. So that is true. So you can say it is a kind of subtle estrous cycle as well, that during the time of ovulation they have more of a kind of urge for any kind of sexual behavior. Okay, so that has been found in research. So we can say, like in chemistry you read, a covalent bond also can have ionic character. Okay, and ionic bond can also have covalent bond character, right? So same way, it is not completely menstrual. We have kind of estrous cycle as well. Okay, so what happens is, suppose you take the, you can say, rabbit example. So in sexually experienced rabbits, okay, the presence of a male without copulation, okay, is enough to trigger ovulation. Whereas human females are what? They are not induced, they are spontaneous ovulators. In that, ovulation happens periodically whether coitus copulation occurs or not. Okay, and then you have daily, you can say, light cycles, which have profound influence on the estrous cycle on some mammals. Okay, so in, for example, if laboratory rats with a 4 to 5 day estrous cycle, okay, are kept on a 12-hour light, 12-hour dark, you can say, daily cycle, okay, with lights turned on at around, you can say, 6 a.m. The rats ovulate at 2 a.m. then on the morning of the estrus. Okay, so these kinds of things, the research has been done. Okay, but if the rats are kept in constant, you can say, light, they'll be in estrus continuously, and if they're kept in constant darkness, they'll be in constant anestrus. Okay, so this is also true. Okay, now, social interactions can also influence estrous cycles in some mammals. Okay, if female rats are kept together without males, their estrous cycles are irregular and not synchronized. However, if females are grouped together with males, most of the females eventually will reach estrus on the same day. Okay, they then reach the estrus on the same day. That's a great fact. Also, it is known in some books by the name as Witten effect. Okay, known as Witten effect. That if you keep a lot of females and a lot of males together, and those females whose estrous cycles were disrupted, they're all, most of the females' estrous cycles will align. Okay, they will become, you can say, completely appropriate. They will reach estrus on the same day. Okay, now what happens is, the word menstrual has its roots in the Latin word mensis, okay, which means month. The menstrual cycle averages the length of a lunar month. You can say 29.5 days. Exactly, you can say 28 days, but 10 to 15% of the menstrual cycle are still, you can say, a little bit more than 28, about 29.5 days. But it varies from women to women. Okay, most cycles are 20 to 30 days long. Okay, in some women, you can say, the cycle are less than 25 days, or it could be longer than 30 days. Okay, younger women, they tend to have a longer cycle than older women. That is also true. Younger women, they have a longer menstrual cycle, have longer menstrual cycle than older women. Okay, that is very, very true. Okay, so, and you can say, for example, the average length, okay, of the menstrual cycle is 35 days in 15 to 19-year olds. Okay, in 15 to 19-year olds, 35 days. Okay, 35 days in 15 to 19 years old women. Okay, and you can say it is about 30 days in 30-year olds and 28 days in 25-year olds. Okay, And then what's written in your book 28 days, it is mostly found in women who are 35 years or older. Okay, so that is there, that has been found in research. Okay, now what you can say is each menstrual cycle can be divided into, you can say, four phases. Number one is the, you can say, the menstrual phase itself. The menstrual phase is known as the destructive phase. Then you have the follicular phase or the proliferative or the estrogenic phase. Then you have the ovulatory phase. And then you have the luteal or secretory or progestational phase. Okay. So you can divide a menstrual cycle into four phases. So number one is menstrual phase or destructive phase. The number two is follicular phase or proliferative slash estrogenic. Estrogenic phase. Okay. Now number three is, you can say, the luteal or secretory or progestational phase. Wait, number three will be ovulatory. That's one day only, day 14. Then number four is luteal slash secretory slash progestational. Progestational phase. Okay. So there are four phases of the menstrual cycle. Okay. So there are two ways to go about it. Okay. Two ways to know or two ways to discern the menstrual cycle. Okay. The number one is, okay, the number one way is, like, the way I like to do it is, I like to put it in terms of the synthesis of the endometrial lining. Okay, the endometrial lining, the, you can say, stratum functionalis, that specific lining. So if I start the menstrual cycle technically, suppose a bioscientist is starting in menstrual cycle, he would say day 1 to day 12 or 13 is the follicular phase. But as far as the gynecology is concerned, okay, so the term gynecology department is concerned, they count the menstrual cycle from the day the first bleeding begins or commences. So you can say day 1 to 5, okay, is the, is almost your, not almost, it is the destructive phase or menstrual phase, day 1 to 4 or sometimes 5 day bleeding. Then day 5 to 12 or 13 is the, you can say, the follicular phase. Okay, if you count it like that, then follicular phase is almost 8 days, you can say. So day 1 to 8 would be your, you can say, follicular days. But here day 5 to day 12 or day 13, then day to 13 to 15, or exactly as per the NEET examination, day 14 is the ovulatory phase. And then from day 15 to day 28, okay, so almost, you can say, 12 to 13 days is your, you can say, the luteal phase or progestational phase of, you can say, menstrual cycle. Okay, so let's come to the menstrual cycle in detail. Okay, so let's talk about the menstrual phase first. So during menstruation or the menstrual period, okay, I have already told you that the part of the lining of the uterus known as the, you can say, stratum functionalis of the endometrium would degenerate, okay, and is sloughed off, okay. So this layer during the menstrual phase, so the layer known as stratum functionalis, okay, of the endometrium, it is sloughed off. Now, how does this degeneration occur? Okay, what happens is this tissue degenerates by ischemia. Ischemia means, you can say, clot formation. Okay, because the blood vessels that supply it with nutrients and oxygen, they begin to constrict and dilate spasmodically. Okay, now these vessels bleed as part of the lining, or as the lining degenerates. Okay, so they die due to ischemic event. Like you have transient ischemic attack in the carotid artery, that clot formation, and then hypoxia in the brain, and then that could be a cerebrovascular accident or stroke. Same way ischemia in the carotid artery or its branches like diagonal, or you can say the circumflex artery, or left, you can say anterior descending artery, can lead to myocardial infarction or heart attack, right? That is again an ischemic event. So this is due to the, you can say, the blood vessels that supplied with nutrients, oxygen, they begin to constrict and dilate, you can say, spasmodically. So blood vessels which brings in O2, nutrients, they begin to dilate and constrict spasmodically. Okay, that will lead to the destruction of the entire blood vessel, and that would then lead to hypoxia, nutrient exhaustion, deprivation, and then death of the stratum functionalis tissue. Okay, so most women lose 10 to 80 ml of fluid during menstruation. Okay, so loss of more than 80 ml is considered to be a very heavy menstrual flow. Okay, that is known as menorrhagia. So the thing is, 10 to 80, 30 ml is an average. Okay, blood or fluid, you can say, is lost. More than 80 ml is heavy flow, heavy menstrual flow. Okay, that is known as menorrhagia. Okay, now when a woman suspects that more than 80 ml of menstrual fluid is lost, okay, then she must supplement her diet with iron to prevent possible iron deficiency, which is then known as anemia, because you know that Fe2 plus, the ferrous state, is present in the protoporphyrin ring, which is attached to the each of the polypeptides. So four protoporphyrin rings are attached to four polypeptides of hemoglobin, alpha 2 beta 2 in adults, right? And also vitamin B12 also becomes very essential. Okay, so the menstrual discharge, you would be thinking that it only contains blood. No, it does not only contain blood but also other uterine fluids. Okay, like the debris from the sloughing endometrium, the cervical mucus, and vaginal secretions. Okay, so the menstrual discharge does not only contain blood, it will contain the cervical mucus also. Okay, it would contain the debris of endometrium and vaginal secretions also. The tissues, okay, the stratum functionalis, then the vaginal secretions. Okay. So those things it contains. Now, the debris from the endometrium is quite thick, okay, and is often mistaken for blood clots, okay. Actually, the uterine blood initially clots, but then it liquefies and leaves the body in the form of menstrual flow, okay. So, one theory holds that menstruation has evolved, you can say, to assist or to help protect the female against infection by sexually transmitted diseases carried by the male. This is one theory. Okay. Now, how does it happen is the corpus luteum of the previous cycle. Okay. Of the previous cycle, when I'll come to the, you can say, the follicular phase, will be knowing it better. So the corpus luteum of the previous cycle has regressed by day one of the menstrual cycle. Okay, and the resultant decrease in blood vessels, or you can say blood level, of estradiol and progesterone, it causes the layer known as stratum functionalis of the uterine endometrium to degenerate. Okay, so corpus luteum would then turn into corpus albicans, right? To corpus albicans. I told you it can. This follows the delta 4 pathway, right? It produces progesterone and estrogen both. If you remember in the last class, I had shown you. So now it cannot produce estrogen and heavy progesterone level. So both the levels will dip in the blood, and then the stratum functionalis would start to degenerate. Would degenerate. Okay. Now, the ovaries at day 1 contain only small tertiary follicles which are less than 5 millimeter in diameter, okay, along with various atretic follicles that we have talked about and thousands of smaller follicles. Okay. Now by day 3, some of the small tertiary follicles have enlarged, okay, to about 10 mm in diameter. Okay. So you can say that the pituitary hormones FSH and LH and steroid hormones estradiol and progesterone, because FSH and LH are not steroid hormones, okay, they are the protein hormones, right? So it will, their, you can say, levels will keep changing throughout the menstrual cycle. Okay, so what happens is their level, it keeps changing throughout the menstrual cycle. Now by day 3, however, FSH begins to cause some follicles to increase in size. Now as these follicles grow, okay, they begin to secrete estradiol, just the way I had explained to you. If you remember, FSH will come and bind to, you can say, the receptors on the granulosa cells, right? And then they will make aromatase, same way the theca interna would express LH receptor, and then you can say they would be producing androstenedione, or you can say simply testosterone, which will seep in through the gap junction into the granulosa cells, where they will be converted to 17 beta estradiol, and then 17 beta estradiol will then cause the granulosa cells will bind to the receptors on the granulosa cells, because they are now steroid hormones. They can directly go through the plasma membrane, you can think of, and they'll bind to the nuclear receptor on the cancer cells, and then also they will then proceed on to the other body parts also. Okay, so they do start to secrete estradiol, and that estradiol only leads to, you can say, more and more LH, you can say, receptors will be expressed also by the granulosa cells. Those estradiol will cause the expression of LH receptor also, and then the LH surge would in turn cause the ovulation to occur. Okay, if you remember the first few classes where I had explained to you the diplotin arrest, there I had explained to you all these theories, right? So that is how it takes place. Okay. Now coming to the follicular phase. Now the follicular phase is so named because it is characterized by the rapid growth of ovarian follicles. Okay, rapid growth of ovarian follicles. You can write it here. Follicular phase. Rapid growth of ovarian follicles. Okay. Now, growth of these follicles is what? Is the culmination of their development that began when the female was a fetus. That again, that diagram that I had given to you from the primordial follicle, okay, to the fetus, about then, you can say, gestation. Thereafter new follicles, they begin, you can say, to grow day by day. Okay, now how these primordial follicles are chosen, okay, to initiate development is not still understood. Okay, and it is also not understood whether the signal is a positive selection factor or release from growth inhibition. Like the follicles which are chosen, the primary, you can say, the primordial follicles, are they released from inhibition or some are stimulated? What is really happening? Okay, so that stuff is still not known in research, like how are those primordial follicles chosen. Okay, so the initial recruitment, it would wake, in a sense, it would stimulate the resting primordial follicles and sets them on a path of commitment to growth and development. Okay. Now, those primordial follicles which are not selected, they remain quiescent. You might have learned about G naught phase of the cell cycle. It's the quiescent phase, inactive. So they remain quiescent and represent the pool of follicles for future development. So, which primordial follicles must be chosen? Which is chosen? Then how is it chosen? Okay, you can say, is it a feedback mechanism, or is it a release from negative inhibition, or stimulated, okay, by some factors? These are still not understood. Okay, not known, you can say unknown. So the primordial follicles which are chosen will grow. How they are chosen, still it is not known. They which are chosen would be committed to the path of development and growth others or other primordial follicles will remain quiescent for future use. Quiescent for future use. Okay, so this is the theory that you should be knowing regarding the conceptual understanding. Okay, now the stages of follicle growth are considered to be gonadotropin independent, but however, without sufficient gonadotropin, they cannot develop further, okay, and will die by atresia. Meaning that the initiation of the growth is gonadotropin independent, but the continuation, the perpetuation of the growth will require gonadotropin releasing hormones. Okay, that is the meaning. Okay, so at beginning of, you can say, puberty, during each of the approximately, or you can say, monthly cycles, a group of tertiary follicles is recruited into the final stage of growth in preparation for ovulation. Okay, not one but a group of tertiary follicles are recruited, okay, just before ovulation during each cycle. Okay, a group of tertiary follicles means Graafian follicles are recruited. Okay, but what happens is they are recruited into the final stage of growth. Okay, in the preparation for ovulation. Okay, final stage of growth, you can write stage of growth. But now what happens is, now there is a specialized thing that is happening. Okay, so this selection, okay, that occurs each cycle, okay, this special selection that occurs during each cycle is known as cyclic recruitment. Okay, is known as cyclic recruitment. So we all know that under the influence of FSH, a selected cohort of tertiary follicles in each ovary is rescued from atresia and begins rapid growth. Okay, because all the follicles I had explained to you during the diplotin arrest evasion, that all the follicles, they do not express the FSH receptors. The ganosocytes do not express the FSH receptors. If they do not express the FSH receptor, they cannot theoretically produce aromatase, and then they cannot escape the other signaling processes that will make them evade atresia. And once they produce aromatase, then they can convert the testosterone or androstenedione to estradiol of 17 beta estradiol, which will then cause the, you can say, induction of LH receptor on the gynosocytes, and then will lead to LH surge. Okay, so unless they first express FSH receptors, because FSH is not a lipid soluble hormone, it cannot go through the plasma membrane and bind to the nuclear receptor like 17 beta estradiol or progesterone. They are protein hormones, right? They need to bind to their specific receptors. Mostly they are the protein receptors which fall under the category of G protein coupled receptors or GPCRs, which are the integral membrane proteins. They are transmembrane proteins which pass the membrane 7 times. Okay, so they bind to that, and then only the downstream signaling cascade will be initiated. Okay, now what happens is these specific follicles, they increase greatly in size during the follicular phase, and few reach 14 to 21 mm in diameter by days 10 to 12. Okay, these follicles, they grow rapidly in the follicular phase, and some of them, okay, a few reach 14 to 21 mm. Some of them reach the diameter of 14 to 21 mm. Okay, 14 to 20 mm by days 10 to 12. Always remember, not every follicle not every tertiary follicle expresses FSH receptors. Always know this fact. The granulosa cells or the follicular cells which lie underneath the membrana granulosa, which is the basal membrane that demarcates the connective tissue, the stromal tissue, theca externa, interna, and the granulosa cells. So the granulosa cells, they do not express. Okay, you can write the granulosa cells or follicular cells, which are the epithelial cells. Okay, they do not express the FSH receptors. Not every tertiary follicle they express or expresses the FSH receptors. Okay. Now by day 13, what happens is usually only one large follicle will become a true Graafian follicle. Okay, will become a true Graafian follicle, and other follicles that have previously begun rapid growth, they become, you can say, atretic, or they degenerate. By day 12, the follicles which were not able to reach, suppose, the 21 mm diameter limit, okay, they become atretic. Okay, other follicles which had also begun, other follicles which had also begun rapid growth and cannot reach the 14 to 21 mm mark, they become atretic, means they degenerate. They degenerate. Okay. Then by day 13, usually one large follicle becomes a true Graafian follicle. One large Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle reaches the diameter of 20 to 25 mm. Okay, reaches the diameter of 20 to 25 mm. Okay, and is present in only one ovary, because I had told you before also that there is a specific, you can say, signaling pathway that regulates, you can say, ovulation. That suppose in this month your left ovary is ovulating, the next month your right ovary would be ovulating, and this cycle continues. Okay, so the thing is, the pathway, the regulatory pathway is still under study by the researchers, but this is the thing that occurs, right? So only one Graafian follicle it remains in the end, and that too in one ovary, okay, which is 20 to 25 mm in diameter. The remaining large follicles, now the remaining all the large follicles, okay, in each ovary they die by atresia, because in both the ovaries it keeps on happening. Now in one ovary all the follicles will die, in one ovary every other follicle will die, even being which one, or which are the ones or which were able to reach 14 to 20 landmark, they will also die, because only one will remain which has now crossed that barricade also and reached the 20 to 25 diameter. Okay, rest all the follicles, okay, all the other follicles, okay, or the remaining large follicles I should be writing, it would be better. Okay. The remaining large follicles in both the ovaries, okay, would have undergone atresia or degeneration. Atresia. Okay, so that is the thing. Now, estradiol is secreted by the larger follicles in each ovary, okay, including those that may later become atretic because they did express the FS receptor. Okay, that's why they were able to reach the 14 to 21 mark. Okay, now this rise in estrogen would cause the uterine endometrium to proliferate or thicken during the follicular phase. Okay, now this rise in estrogen causes the stratum functionalis or the endometrial layer to thicken. That is what is known as proliferative phase. It just proliferates. The cells they proliferate. Okay, the vascularity increases. Okay, to thicken. Okay, during this follicular phase. Okay, now thus with reference to the uterus you can call this phase of the menstrual cycle as the proliferative phase. Okay, and also under the uterine, or you can say the estrogenic influence, or the you can say the influence of the estrogen, the uterine glands they also begin to enlarge. Okay, and the endometrium becomes more richly supplied with blood vessels, and also water accumulates between cells in the tissues. This is a condition known as edema. Okay, water accumulation also starts to occur between the cells in the tissues known as edema. Okay, these are the hallmarks of follicular phase. In the next class, I'll be showing you the negative feedback loop, which governs the follicular phase, and we'll be dealing with the other phases of this menstruation along with their negative feedback loop as well. Okay, so I hope you were able to comprehend the lecture. If you had any doubts, you can contact me on my personal number to get my prompt reply. Okay, then thanks a lot.